Saskatoon is in the room. A Fool's Bowl is in the room.
Hello, music multiverse listeners, and welcome to Beyond Your Radio Unknown Sundays. It's time to talk about bands, artists, anything in the multiverse of music that could be relatively unknown, missed by most, or something totally obscure that our watchers, our listeners out there might be interested in. A rabbit hole to go down as much, past and or present. Please remember that this is an extension of our article section on www.beyondyourradio.com. You can look for the article section there. So if you want the full detail of the article and all the links, it's there. This Sunday, experimental comes to mind when you think of unknowns quite a bit. They start in some obscure place that, well, that's what's expected, or it's encouraged, or, well, maybe even tolerated. There's clubs like this across the United States from a standpoint of Nashville and Chicago and, of course, New York City. And that's where today's unknown got their sound and developed a cult following that, well, to this day is still kind of prevalent, even though they're currently not together, nor have they been in quite some time. Who am I talking about? Well, a band that utilized an electronic trip hop that stepped so far away from what Portishead was doing, and that traditional rap speaking kind of came with a comedic prose and an over-the-top repetition that became the beat somewhat. The band that named after a poem inspired by Neil Young vomiting off the side of a bus. Don't believe me? Soul Coughing on Unknown Sundays 2024. But before I get into this cult band from the 90s, if you're not subscribed yet, maybe it's about time. Please also remember to like and comment. We love the banter. We love the opinions and lists, all that stuff. We respond awfully quick too. Now, on to Soul Coughing. So it all starts college radio. Despite the raw and unpredictable hosts and the scheduling issues and the small reach that these stations have over wherever it comes out of whatever college, they're pretty important back in the late 80s and 90s, and even into the 2000s, for being able to give you bands and artists that you might not be able to hear on the radio. My Grace Radio, today's Unknown Sunday 2024 features that band, like that Jeff Crichton would talk about, and from our panelist show, because he's been a record sales specialist for eons. We'll tell you that radio is dominated by those that have a marketing and sales technique and reach. They're willing to pull out all the stops and money to get into radio. The other percentage, which is dynamically very small, are accidental discoveries of some minor place, like that of a DJ who hosts a show, a host of a show, or social media platforms that suddenly are broken by it, right? Something that gets uber famous. Soul Coughing on Unknown Sundays is not going to be the one in the social or internet areas, because it really wasn't developed at that time. But they get there such of the nature that out of place area in a club. They are, that kind of band that gets developed in being in a club multiple times, and then that area and that region becomes associated with them, and that's New York City. And there's a particular club there where this happens, and that's the Knitting Factory. So in this instance, no album, because vinyl is nearly dead at this point. And as they get their popularity, they get their first record and CD that's slowly, coming into the digital arena too in the 90s. So that's where the great part about college radio is that DJ freedom and unexpected change-up. And I could experience this a few times a month while being in Rochester, New York, on sales and demo things that I had to do in the restaurant equipment. I know I've spoken of the record store side trips during those days, but this is experience it right from the comfort of the car. That is until the signal goes out. So I was fortunate this particular day that I was going into Rochester when the radio station came into play, and I was getting the maybe 59 or 60% of this particular song. And luckily on that day, it was coming in, and then there's this upright bass beat and roll and a grinding kind of organ grinder kind of keyboard thing that was being repetitive. and it's utterly unique as hell. And the lyrical line is, "It's 5 a.m. and you are listening to Los Angeles," spoke the vocalist. The song was Screenwriter's Blues that I'd heard, although at that point I had no idea who or the name of the song. But I was lucky enough that the DJ was able to recount that after a few more plays. That doesn't always happen. It's lucky for me because on that trip I was able to purchase Ruby Vroom, which was available on CD in one of the record stores that specialized technically in getting more obscure stuff. So they had it. Screenwriter's Blues, which turned out to be the debut single, I'm pretty sure, that went through with Ruby Vroom. It's sort of an electronic jazz alternative mix. I'm not saying I'm first person to join the cult of soul coughing, but it was very early on, and I know my wife was not exactly smitten with the repetitious nature of it. But this groove jazz certainly was something fresh that would not have gone in that grunge chasm that was going on at the time, right? I don't want you to remember, this is 1994. Super Unknown, The Downward Spiral, Jar of Flies, MTV's Nirvana Unplugged, The Division Bell, the last Pink Floyd record, Mellow Gold from Beck, and what I consider to be one of the greatest grunge records of all time, Throwing Copper from the band Live. So when this sound is out there, it's definitely in the underground music multiverse, a wild, uniquely comprised treasure that needed to rise to the ear of the rest of the world, which was not going to be acceptable at this point, considering what everybody else is into. So let's just talk about the recording process of this band, okay? So just for a bit, you've got this idea of complete ballpark experimentalism that goes on. And the individual who worked on the album was a proponent of this, but I think this went way off the map here. But they were sticking a binaural head-shaped microphone in front of a drum kit. They were sticking a mic in a car muffler called the Bone and sticking that in a drum booth, as well as having Mike Doughty, the improvised wild yelling ad-libs, singing into a cheap amplification system called a hula that Blake, one of the individuals involved in the project, bought in India. So I mean, that speaker was essentially probably just a huge bullhorn atop a stick. This goes without mentioning the answering machine, pre-recorded messages from Dottie's ex-girlfriend, and other samplings and oddities to enrapture it all. Those songs that were most well affected were Bus to Beelzebub, Zoom Zip and I Wake Up, featuring Bobby McFerrin covering Joan Armatrading. So this is without even mentioning Thelonious Monk is on there, Howling Wolf, and Raymond Scott, who was the inventor of the electronic instrument. So this is packed. And if you have your noise canceling headphones in, you're in for an experience that's so deep and so textural that you're going to pick these things up more and more you listen to it, as well as that upright bass playing jazz electronic that it's not even electronic, to be honest with you. The bass isn't, the drums probably aren't, but the looping of all this crazy stuff is. There's not too many debut albums in the field of experimentation like this, for sure. There's critical reception up the yin-yang, and the band debut goes well amidst the crushing popularity of everything around it, which isn't bad, right? They even get attention in soundtrack and television shows. So they get a cult following behind people like Chris Carter of the X-Files, so they get to be on that show, a song called Unmarked Helicopters. Also on several other cult films and exposures there. So things are going well with the songs in the past and current being used in other movies and commercials. But however, it all doesn't come without criticism of the depth of Mike Doughty's voice, which is not, he's not a singer technically, and his guitar playing and the one-trick pony principle of it all. But I mean, I don't agree with that, but that's what's going on. But I never hear it that way either, because on albums that come forth later, like El Oso, there's a brilliant St. Louis is Listening, which is excellent.
You don't use words like that. always is listening. Let me get up on it. Let me get up on it. Let me get.
And gripping, but just as crazy experimental as it was too. It can wear on the process and the members. I can see that happening in the studio. Mike Doughty wound up moving into a solo career in 2000 when the band broke up, which took his lines and delivery onto an area of like acoustic, kind of being a one-man band, programming a bit here and there, but it's not like he's soul coughing when you hear him in the later parts. The other Mark Antoni, he went on to score motion picture, television, documentaries, and more, returning with another member of Soul Coughing to be the backing group for the lead singer of Cibo Matto, which might have been another influence that this band might have had on of what they did. So if you know Cibo Matto, you know what I speak of, as they shared the same producer from Ruby Vroom. The bass of Sebastian Steinberg. Okay, I mean he joined Mark in that I'm talking about just a little minute ago, but you know that he was going to play with great people. I mean, he had that Squirrel Nut Zippers kind of thing, although he never played with them. But it's he performed with Fiona Apple, Eddie Vedder, Johnny Marr, Vanessa Carlton, and he's currently on tour with Diana Krall. So how about that bass, right? It's all about that bass, and at least Diana Krall knows why. Soul Coughing is earworthy, for sure. If you've never heard of them, or maybe you have, but you didn't realize it was them, this is a small rabbit hole to go down, and then Mike Doughty's a bigger rabbit hole. The 3 albums have such a variety of dark songs as really when you're listening to these, none of these are happy, but they still have that happy bounce and beat to it, which is interesting. But you can certainly appreciate the words, the crafting of the words, the jabs that happen, and plays alongside world-class bass playing and fantastically unique versions of trip hop, looping, and sample drops that make it all come together as only Soul Coughing can really do. Albums from Soul Coughing in my collection: Ruby Vroom in 1994, Irresistible Bliss, 1996, and El Oso in 1998. Mike Doughty's solo records, I have the Skittish, which started in 2000, but it was actually recorded in 1996. Haughty Melodic, which was actually featured on the channel as a challenge to the Grateful Dude a little while ago. That was from 2005. Followed by Golden Delicious in 2008, Sad Man, Happy Man in 2009. I don't have Yes and also Yes from 2011. The Flip is another Honey in 2012 is a covers album. I don't have that. I do have Stellar Motel from 2016 and The Heart Watches While the Brain Burns from 2018. I'm still searching. Oh no, I had that one. There's something going on about another Vroom, VROOM. I didn't put this in the article at all or on the YouTube channel, but you can look that up as well. There's more going on with Mike Doughty. Soul Coughing. I know some people might know who they are considering the cult following, but if you haven't, what was your if you're going to listen to it, what was your impression? And all those people from the cult, let me know how you've seen this Soul Coughing, and would you love a reunion? I guess there was one about a little bit ago, but I didn't, obviously that was just in one place. They do have a star on a bar in Minneapolis because of their ability to sell that out every time. There's always one place in the country that loves you to death, and I guess Minneapolis was that for Soul Coughing. Leave us a comment or two, like, subscribe to the channel. We're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. It's all about bands, albums, artists, anything we can get our hands on. Join us next week for Uncle. Go Beyond Your Radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. Thanks for watching and happy listening.